Hello and welcome to the Move Your Business Forward podcast. These talks are hosted by Rob Boll, founder of Evoke Management and CEO of International Leaders UK. We'll be talking with experts from both these companies about issues that affect SME companies today.
Welcome to this episode of the Move Your Business Forward podcast. Today we're particularly talking about CFOs. What can a part-time CFO do for you and your business? And by CFO, we would include finance director in that as well, but specifically part-time because that's what I'm in the business in at Evoke, and we've got team members here joining me that are linked to that as well. So, Nige, thank you very much for joining us. You're one of our commercial directors at Evoke, so you're not a CFO or an FD, but you're going to talk about your perspective of working alongside or seeing how they help businesses. And Phil, you cover the role of both commercial, finance director, CFO, and you've been that role in your own business that you've exited as well. So you've got lots of experience to bring to this conversation about what a part-time CFO can do for you and your business. Why is this important? Why should we even be talking about this? Nige, what do you reckon? Why is it an important thing to talk about?
CFO, call it what you will, depends on what the task you're doing, I guess, at that point. Key role in the business, and like all key roles, the value to me, if you will, as a commercial director, which is more like my leaning, is around how it can help inject. What I'm looking for is pace and time saving in the business in a cost-effective way. And I'm pretty clear that when I look at what the role can do in terms of bringing people with experience in, at a time when my internal resource either doesn't exist or isn't trained to do something, can expedite those two things. And I think that's absolutely central to partly what we try to do as a whole. Yeah. So when I look at the part-time roles, I see it as a skill injection based on a particular need, generally speaking. Can be a long-term piece for the business as well. Might be the right long-term solution. I'm sure we'll cover that. But that's my take. I look for the value it can create. And I think the value return, bringing in skills, people who've got that experience and can drop that into your business and hopefully leave some of it behind is a real benefit.
And I guess what you're saying there is businesses get to that point where you just need more experience and resource. And if you haven't got that to hand, rather than go full hog and get a full-time expensive person, or potentially even worse, set a budget and get an underqualified, not as good person full-time. This is a solution. And I think
the risk profile is far lower on doing it through this kind of solution as well, rather than taking it through the permanent solution.
Yeah, sure. Well, Phil, I'm going to get your thoughts, and then Nigel, we'll come back to just some of the things that you've seen in your commercial seat when you've been working with companies about what specifically CFO FD can do. Yep. So Phil, what's your kind of immediate thoughts around this topic of what a CFO could do and why we should be talking about it?
Okay, I mean, as you mentioned, one of the things that I found, I co-founded a business a long time ago, but we built it over a period of time. And one of the challenges I think you have is founders often have the operational and the business experience in the area they operate in. But as Nige says, it's like bringing in people with the experience at key moments just helps you get to the next stage, helps you propel yourself forward. There's a lot of things that a CFO can do that will basically mean that you can be more efficient in how you operate. You can start to think about KPIs, and a lot of things that a business owner will do is have many different things on their plate. And by bringing in someone else who's got the experience, you just don't have to spend as long scaling and getting up to the next stage, because you're basically bringing in that kind of help, a very efficient way of doing it. Because a lot of the time most SMEs don't necessarily need a full-time, senior finance role. They probably have a bookkeeper. They've gone through that process of having someone who does their accounts, but they're lacking that kind of that extra level of knowledge and experience that helps them scale to get to the next stage. And I think that's really part of it. And by bringing someone into the leadership team who's actually got that experience, it then adds all the kind of add-on benefits where they will just have that experience that you can add into your team that just helps you grow to that next stage. And I think that's really important, is because you don't always know. Yeah, there's some things that you have to go through in terms of, whether it's funding, whether it's claiming for R&D, whether it's basically presenting your accounts, whether it's diligence in an acquisition process, any of those things, you can spend a lot of time doing them, but that will detract you from your core purpose of the business. And you will have to learn how to do that. And it takes time, and it's a major deflection. Whereas bringing someone in to help you do that just means that you can do everything a lot more efficiently at a pretty quick rate to be able to get to that next stage.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks for sharing those thoughts, Phil. And I think, as you say, and backing up with Nige, it's just getting that experience and accelerating that experience being in the business. It's almost just turning on a tap, isn't it? Just bringing that experience right in to the business to help. I guess what'd be interesting, Nige, is from your take, what are the things that you've seen CFOs, FDs do to businesses and often as they go through these key stages of growth or getting back on track if they've maybe gone through a traumatic experience of losing their way or getting into a problem. So your thoughts on what a CFO FD brings from your side of the fence.
Well, I'm going to pick up on one of the things that Phil said to start with there, which was the foundation piece, which I think is really central to a business. Once it gets to that, there's a tipping point where you're doing it all yourself, almost around the kitchen table, and you don't realize what you're missing in terms of the obvious ones, the management accounts at the end of the month, those sort of things, but the broader ones about how setting the right KPIs and targets through the business, financial being part of it, but the other targets as well, is what allows you to grow and manage the business on a broader scale. So a good reporting regime is fundamental to managing a diverse business, which a lot are these days, split across many locations, and working virtually. There's a central piece there that an FD can lead in for you, and it falls out of what they'll produce at the end of the month in terms of the core board report around the management accounts, which again, if you know what you're doing with that to elevate the story and be able to pull that story out to the board colleagues, that's far better than just getting the data in front of you. So I've absolutely worked on several occasions with FDs that came in to do that. And actually, in some ways, in at least one occasion, where we brought in sector specific, who understood the need, for example, of a direct mail remote selling business, the issues of when do you declare a sale in retail and things like that. There are a lot of reporting things that will be specific to your sector. So you get the opportunity to pull in some of those elements, that'll be specific to you and to your needs that you don't need to learn yourself. And then other than that, and then if you look at the other point times that Phil talked to there in terms of be it funding outreach, be it purchase, be it selling your business, be it just creating the scale plan that you need to do. These are things that you're not going to have to do more than once. So at many occasions, my preferred route almost, because what I need from my core FD, is not likely to be the same person who's got the best network for my funding outreach. So actually, I would strongly suggest that, in my sector, a good commercial FD will be bringing in commercial challenge to themselves as well. And a good CFO or FD will know where their boundaries are and know where they're best placed to pull somebody in. So actually, it comes in, just because you've got one doesn't mean you don't need one. It's about the point in where the business is. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. And there's different FDs, different experiences and different ways of working as well. I was talking to a CFO last week who potentially might be joining our team, and he's very much into just doing deals and due deal with private equity backed firms or going through that transaction. Then he moves on, and it's that rhythm that's what he knows, that's what he likes. It's that kind of boom, just smash through over a certain period of time, hard graft to get through what he needs to get a deal over the line, backed by PE people that are coming in and looking at it. That is a very different skill set and way of working to someone that's going to be maybe a bit longer term, actually thinking a bit more about actually the growth and how to actually get this business going, rather than almost looking at it from an outsider's what's wrong with this business or what's going to trip us up if we do an investment. It's different ways of looking at things, and it's not the same person necessarily.
Different skills as well, and that's not to criticize one or the other. The person coming in to put in foundations in the business, be it the management reporting, be it the KPI set, that's a leadership piece. That's about taking the team with you, the existing team with you, engaging them in a long-term process for the business. The due diligence thing you talked about is much more of a challenge role. Yeah, it's much more about, it's a more commercial role, and it's more about really challenging things in the business. Now, it's not often that those two skill sets from a behavioral perspective sit in the same place, never mind what people actually prefer to do, you know?
So Phil, coming on to you, it'd be interesting to get your take, given you've sat in this seat for your own business, and in some ways, there's stuff you would go through with your own business, which, you know, you would have gone through for the first time. And looking back, anything you would have changed with that experience, or you think, you know, the particular things that you experienced sat in that CFO FD seat as you went through an exit and through that transaction?
I think often for many businesses, they go through, as I say, they go through that kind of evolution where they start, you know, necessarily go through, they have the founders, they start bringing in people to do the operational roles, sales. Often with finance, it's either, you know, an in-house bookkeeper and or reliance on your accountants. So what I found particularly is I've worked with some great accountants, and they're fantastic sources of advice. But what they tend to do is very much, it's a very much reporting based relationship where they're not digging into the numbers. They're not basically looking at, you know, ways that you can potentially improve your business. So, for example, you know, do you always look at growth in terms of volume of sales, or do you potentially look at, you know, increasing, you know, pushing your margins, which is, you know, quite often a much easier way to grow your business if, you know, obviously commercially possible. But I think that's one of the things that I found, which was that we kind of relied in the past, kind of over relied on accountants to do it. And as I say, I would generally use an outsourced accounting firm for things like, you know, doing my, you know, tax returns, filing my year ends. But actually, they just, you know, what they tend to, you know, bring to the party is something very different in terms of that reporting based structure. Whereas actually, you know, what you want to be able to do is go to you know, having a P&L is great, but actually knowing that, you know, where's your growth, you know. As Nige says, you know, understanding, you know, what is going to be expected from you when you come to speak to an investor or a potential acquirer. You know, they want to know what is your, you know, what is your revenue, what's your pipeline, you know, how are you declaring your income? You know, my field is largely in SaaS-based companies, and they're being able to produce recurring revenue figures and have confidence in them, as well as showing what churn you've got. All of those things are really important. Whereas typically when you get a bookkeeper or an accountant, you're just getting, oh, well, we made, you know, this amount of money last month, not that digging into, well, actually, are we declaring it correctly? Are we presenting it the right way? And that doesn't necessarily, you know, it's slightly different from a tax angle in terms of when you pay tax, but from an investor's point of view, they, you know, they may simply look at that recurring figure and say, you know, this is how I want to see it. So having that experience, I think that's one of the things, the main thing that I found, which was when we came to go through the process of presenting ourselves to potential acquirers or investors, having that knowledge up front, it just, you know, you then, it was one less thing for you personally as a founder who's still got all the other stuff like sales, customers, you know, HR, all of the other things to deal with. But you've then got an extra person to help you build that proposition to be able to talk to other people, as well as, it's not just about funding, but that's certainly a big thing that I think we found, which was that, you know, without, you know, if we'd had that help, I think we could have probably circumvented a lot of time and effort on our behalf, sitting there working. I mean, I'm sure many founders have basically looked into an Excel spreadsheet many times to dig out, you know, what is my number that is going to be required, and knowing all of that and having it prepared and ready and having, you know, the confidence to talk to, I think is really critical.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks for sharing that, Phil. Nige, anything to add to that? Because you obviously worked along a number of these scenarios of people scaling, getting investment, but also planning for that exit as well.
No, what I like about the longer term relationship, as opposed to the differential, as you described, Phil, what your accountant's going to be doing for you, is your accountant's completing a set of tasks. It doesn't mean they're passionate about your business. Okay, a good part-time CFO or part-time FD, whatever, or, you know, whatever it might be, will want to become passionate about your business and be part of it. They'll bring in some technical skills, yeah, but you almost need to get under the skin of the sector and what the business is trying to achieve in a fuller way to be able to do what you've just described, Phil, of the outreach to to funders and things like that, because you may well be the first and primary, and in some cases only source of contact those funders will have before you get the first tick or cross, and before the actual, if you will, founder or permanent people is there. The other thing I think as a business owner is I get very precious about the people I want to bring in long term and how I spend my permanent salary and headcount. Yeah. And I think this is a great way of using, bringing expertise in, but in a more engaged way than just saying, I need someone who does this or the other, and we go from there.
Yeah. I think one interesting point there, Nige, which I hadn't really thought about, is the passion. It's having someone that's going to have passion for your business and where you're going. And I think what's, for us, I kind of feel like everyone on the team has just got that passion. That's why we're doing what we're doing, right? But you could easily be sat there thinking, this is my business. I'm the main shareholder. I'm the one running it. I'm the one that has all those long hours, the stress about it. Do I actually have anyone else around me that's passionate about my business? And actually, how do you kind of validate or test that? I just wondered, Nige, based on what you were saying there, how do you tell if someone that you've got helping you with your business, whether they're employed or there's someone coming in part-time, how do you tell if they're passionate about your business?
I would expect someone coming in to have a depth of knowledge about the sector that they've done via their own research or by their own background. Okay. So I am looking for that. People who can talk the same language. You know what I mean? That it's not, they understand when you start, it's beyond technical terms into simpler things. It's just the way you talk. My background initially was retail, then I've worked on utilities and FS and that. There's a language to each business. And I know if someone's comfortable with the language, then they're probably fairly knowledgeable about the business that we're going into. The other side that I would do when I'm bringing in an FD is to your point, understand their motivations as well. I mean, we go through the challenge of being passionate about 2 or 3 different businesses concurrently, if that makes sense. But that's partly because that's what we're passionate about doing, generally speaking. I mean, I do what I do because I'm trying to put back into a wider number of businesses and help people grow. So I see myself, if you will, as a business coach, and I see the part-time CFO, as in a similar way. A lot of what they'll be doing is be business coaching, and you'll tease that out fairly quickly. So it just makes and if the chemistry doesn't work, then you have to jointly decide it's not right.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I get that. Phil, what's your thoughts on passion? Because obviously it was your business, right? Acting that CFO, right? In a way, you were doing your other bits of your role and a part-time CFO FD role, but you were very passionate about it. It's your business. At the end of the day, the big win at the end of it is going to be yours as well, right? In terms of an exit. So what's your view on passion and finding people with passion?
I think what Nige says is basically that there's that, you want people who are going to be involved, and some of that is over time. And what I've always liked about Evoke is the fact that it's not we'll come and spend a day and then we'll tell you everything. Because in reality you build that knowledge about your specific business, and the passion comes with that, is that you want to, it's important to understand, what are the nuances of your specific business? Is it international? Is it that basically is a very people-driven business? Is it you've got a basically a small number of clients, a large number of clients? How do you sell? All of those things, it just builds a very, you build that picture, and by working with clients over a sustained period, and by doing this way, rather than trying to get say a management consultant or someone to come in for a couple of days, and quite frankly, it always feels a little bit tenuous when you've got someone just telling you everything, for a specific point advice, definitely. But when you're talking about much broader issues in the business, it's about basically having that passion about working with people to further and to see what that founder or that management team want to achieve, and helping them do that. I think that's really important. I think, as I say, it's not something something that you can suddenly say, after one meeting, oh, I know everything about your business now, because that's one is a little bit insulting to a business person that you can tell them everything that they're doing wrong in a single session. Where in reality there are always things that we can identify that will help a business, and you will, over a period of time, you can introduce a number of different changes that will make all the difference. But bringing that kind of involvement and understanding to working with founders to get the most out of it, I think is really key. So yeah, passion is very important.
I think on that point, in terms of how any of us can add value to a business, the first thing you've got to do is get up to speed as quickly as possible to understand what the business is really all about, what's working well, and what probably more importantly isn't. And then if we're going to raise some money from a bank, from an investor, or take it to market to sell, is how quickly can we capture all the stuff around that business that's going to be the right things to be talking about for the relevant stakeholder. And I think that's the skill, isn't it? Coming in and not having any of that baggage and history of stuff that's probably internally irritating people that have been there for years and years, to go, like, let's just get to the point. What are the key parts of this business that we can get our head around, and then translate to the relevant people to make sure we're making good progress. And I think you can't do that unless you believe in the business, right? To come into a business, and sometimes you've got businesses that have got to that point where you think, do you know what, I think you kind of at the end of the road, and the best way forward might be to start talking to an administrator, or go down that route and get to a point where you've got a clean slate. But we've got to be passionate about believing in that business just to show an interest in it. Otherwise, I think the work we do just isn't enjoyable or fun, right? That's the challenge. Yeah,
absolutely.
We've obviously got a little bit out of time for this thing, so I thought we'd just end on a couple of lasting thoughts around anyone listening to this wondering, should they have an FD, CFO? Should it be part-time? Should it be full-time? I mean, I'd always encourage them to just have a conversation and kind of rule out some of these questions they might have going in their head, or rule in some of the things that are important. Nige, what would be your top tip for anyone listening to this, based on something spoken about?
In terms of trying to make that decision, part-time, full-time, do I need... Make sure you're clear on what you believe the right business goals are for your business at that point in time. Be it a 6-month, 12-month planning horizon, whatever it might be. Before you start your outreach, and that'll probably answer the first question, whether it's full-time, part-time, and what skills do I need in the business. Success in pulling someone in, though, one of the advantages of pulling in, if you will, multiple people and to the business at that point in time, only really comes if you then listen. So what I would say, if you're thinking of doing it, bring some people in, but do it in a way that you're expecting to listen, not tell. That's the difference. If someone's in your business, then you're going to probably do a lot more tell and direction. I would expect to be listening a lot, and have a lot of, some of which I won't always agree with, tell from the other person, if that makes sense. No, look, I've seen this 6 times. This is a good solution to try this sort of thing, rather than it being the first time. Yeah,
great. Thanks, Nige. Phil, any top tips for anyone listening to this?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that got me on board with Evoke originally, which is that if you look at the cost of a part-time CFO, it's basically less. You're talking about the equivalent of an administrator working within your business in terms of for most of the tasks you're looking at. So you get incredible value for that. For bringing in that role, and to looking at the things that you would be able to achieve by bringing that type of person on. To me, looking back on my career, it's just definitely something that I just I think there is definite huge value in terms of making that decision. I think what Nige says is right. I think it's still you're still recruiting someone into your business, so it's very important that you basically establish a good relationship with that person. Don't take the first person who comes along. Make sure that you're happy with, basically you can have a good and honest relationship with that person, as if you were employing someone in your staff, because that's the way it's going to work. And as Nigel says again, I mean, expect, you will have some difficult conversations about what the business needs to achieve, but that's where listening and, generally what I would always advocate is, sometimes we propose things which are potentially, going to require some changes, but as long as you can support the evidence, that person can support with whatever changes they're going to make and with evidence, which is what we would aim to do. It can only enhance your business by bringing in that kind of external advice, because sometimes it's just yes, you can do things on your own, but often it by getting in that help, it accelerates your process and accelerates the end goal.
No, that's great, Phil. And I think just to link those two together or reiterate, I think the important thing here is, one, whatever investment you make in someone at this level, you've got to get a return, and doing it on an affordable basis is important. But as Nige said, you've got to understand what you're actually trying to achieve here. No one wakes up and says, right, today let's get an FD or a CFO, because we feel you've got to be looking to achieve something, and realize that your gap is someone in that financial seat to come and help you, and that's got to deliver you a return that's worth investing in. And I think that's a really important thing to remember when you've got to that point. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this. Hopefully some useful bits of thought-provoking insights for people to listen to, and look forward to talking to you on another one of these at some point. So thank you both.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more information about the topics discussed in this podcast, then you can find us on our website at moveyourbusinessforward.com.